a lot more in 6 months. I'll see if there's market pull. I'll see what kind of interest there is, what sort of demographic of patients end up signing up, and I'll know a lot more. But
That's awesome. Well, Doc, as you're going through this process of essentially opening the practice, because a lot of time when we are in the industry and we're talking about, we just was talking to another, Miss Jennifer last night, and everything, the conversation around opening a practice and running a dental practice, the conversation has become around system, system, system. So as you're going through this process, what was some of the systems that you had to implement early on? And what were some of the recommendations of how you pick those companies to work with for your systems?
really good question. There are lots of different types of systems, so it depends
Mhm.
what you're referring to. I happen to have the benefit of having worked with a ton of independent private practices on the supply clinic front, and also worked with a ton of DSOs or group practices, call them what you want, ranging from the smaller at a handful of locations all the way up to several hundred locations, large practices. So I have the benefit of not repeating other people's work and having friends share practice manuals and things like that, and I can kind of piece together what I view as the best of all worlds. But handbook, so to speak, should include not just all the kind of rules and regulations, which you obviously have to have, but there should also be systems and processes documented. Anything and everything from my belief is anything from the messaging to the patient when they walk in the door, and that's not very common. Most people don't think about that. I'll say think about the patient experience from a hospitality angle, but I think that's important. What most people do think about is, okay, here are our systems for whatever, for keeping the practice running on a day-to-day basis with, assistants running items through sterilization and changing over rooms, and a patient coordinator organized in his or her outreach to patients to make sure, effectively convert as much treatment as is planned as possible. You've got, you can have in the back end financial systems and processes and nitty gritty of HR and payroll processes. I mean, everything should ultimately be documented, and otherwise you're effectively kind of flying by the seat of your pants. And oftentimes that is what happened, or what is what happens, or the single doc practice owner has
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dentment. Man, oh man, dental world is just getting better and better for me because, man, I met Dr. Scott, and this gentleman is so kind. He has been very open to having conversation with me. He's somewhat of a mentor to me at this point because he's been connecting me with people and he's been doing things to help us out. So I'm truly grateful to have an opportunity to have a chat with him. Dr. Scott, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for hosting. Excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, Dr. Scott, before we get started, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself to our audience. Let them know what you're doing, and then we'll get into your new project that you're working on. I'm really excited to learn about it. So we'll see how things go.
So sure, in sort of a nutshell of my trajectory to this point, I'm a periodontist by background. I have practiced very part-time since coming out of residency. While in residency, I started a company called Supply Clinic. It's an online marketplace for dental supplies, coupled with procurement software for multi-location groups. Went on that journey. That was about a 10-year journey, and ended up selling the company a couple of years ago. And I am now in the process of launching a practice, a dental practice. So I'm back to the clinical side of things from the business perspective. And the practice is a little bit of a different take on delivery of care, something that I haven't really seen out there. It is a call it a concierge style membership required practice that is interdisciplinary, general driven, but all specialty rotated in-house in the same location, with the notable exception of pediatrics. So we're really looking at an adult population. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. We can kind of dive into
I love that.
whatever direction you want to go. And I just have to say, this is, as you guys know, I also, so for fun, host a podcast called the Open Wide Podcast.
Yes.
It's basically the intersection of oral health, business, technology, startups. And so, yeah, I love what you guys are doing. Super happy to be
Thank you
of
so
whatever help
much.
I can be. But it's always fun being on this side of the podcast.
I know sometimes when they invite me to go on podcasts, I'm like, they start and I'm like, oh, sorry, yeah, I'm on somebody else's podcast. I know how that feels.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. So yeah, yeah, happy to take the conversation,
Thank you so much,
whichever
Doc.
direction you guys are interested and you think your
Yep,
audience might be interested.
absolutely. Doc, the one thing I wanted to ask you, so the model that you're building right now with your current practice, what is that model exactly is? Is it for insurance driven focus, or are people just paying a membership and getting the services? How is that system kind of works out?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're entirely out of network with every insurer. We will, as a courtesy, submit on behalf of patients, but we're entirely outside of that ecosystem. So we'll submit on behalf of a patient as a courtesy and submit in such a way that should the insurance company reimburse for some of the treatment, that goes directly to the patient. So we'll do it as a courtesy. We're looking to elevate the experience, be as white glove, high touch as possible. But no, we don't take any insurance plans. And yes, there is a membership fee just to be a patient at the practice. So yeah, there are two tiers of membership designed right now, and we'll see. I launch in just 3 weeks time or so, and so I will know a lot more in 6 months. I'll see if there's market pull. I'll see what kind of interest there is, what sort of demographic of patients end up signing up, and I'll know a lot more. But
That's awesome. Well, Doc, as you're going through this process of essentially opening the practice, because a lot of time when we are in the industry and we're talking about, we just was talking to another, Miss Jennifer last night, and everything, the conversation around opening a practice and running a dental practice, the conversation has become around system, system, system. So as you're going through this process, what was some of the systems that you had to implement early on? And what were some of the recommendations of how you picked those companies to work with for your systems?
really good question. There are lots of different types of systems, so it depends
Mhm.
what you're referring to. I happen to have the benefit of having worked with a ton of independent private practices on the supply clinic front, and also worked with a ton of DSOs or group practices, call them what you want, ranging from the smaller at a handful of locations all the way up to several hundred locations, large practices. So I have the benefit of not repeating other people's work and having friends share practice manuals and things like that, and I can kind of piece together what I view as the best of all worlds. But handbook, so to speak, should include not just all the kind of rules and regulations, which you obviously have to have, but there should also be systems and processes documented. Anything and everything from my belief is anything from the messaging to the patient when they walk in the door, and that's not very common. Most people don't think about that. I'll say think about the patient experience from a hospitality angle, but I think that's important. What most people do think about is, okay, here are our systems for whatever, for keeping the practice running on a day-to-day basis with, assistants running items through sterilization and changing over rooms, and a patient coordinator organized in his or her outreach to patients to make sure, effectively convert as much treatment as is planned as possible. You've got, you can have in the back end financial systems and processes and nitty gritty of HR and payroll processes. I mean, everything should ultimately be documented, and otherwise you're effectively kind of flying by the seat of your pants. And oftentimes that is what happened, or what is what happens, or the single doc practice owner has everything in his or her head, and it's very difficult then for just people to know what the system or process is. And when anytime there's a new hire, it's just like, you need that doctor to sit down and explain and remember everything that, so documentation is super, super important. I think, yeah, systems and processes are important, and documentation is equally as important. If it's not canonized in a document that anybody can refer to, from someone who's been in the practice for years to, maybe someone calls in sick and you need one team member to be cross-functional all of a sudden and take on tasks of another team member. Well, the easiest way is if they could literally pull it up on a driver in a manual. Hey, follow steps A through Z and be able to tackle what they need to. So yeah, it's just good business principle, I think, more than anything. I don't think it's unique to dental at all. I just think it's
Mhm.
way too often foregone in the dental space.
That's awesome. And then as far as the systems, when you're from, because this is something I'm asking from myself. So when you're going in and you want to open a dental practice, either a startup or existing, Like, what are some of the not system, but let's say for HR, for like revenue cycle, for like PMS system, like what are some of those? How do you determine if those systems, and how do you pick them? Because in the industry that we're in, there's so many different companies, right? I mean,
It's
just the
it
PMS,
yeah.
you know how much it is. So how do you pick that to be like kind of be part of your operational?
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a unique position because I know a lot of the uh, either founders of the companies or the executives of some of these technology companies. As an example, when you refer to practice management software or you refer to, I mean, honestly, for HR, I'm looking at I'll probably use a company like Gusto or Rippling, which are, just super simplified platforms to be able to run your payroll. It's a huge value add in terms of. I mean, I don't mind sharing my personal selection.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do it.
I I'm a little bit of an oddball. I don't kind of so for from a let's start with practice management. From a practice management perspective, I am onboarding with a company called the Dental App, and it is a I think they've been around for, I don't know, I want to say 5, 6 years, something like that. And they have so beautifully integrated what's effectively a CRM platform, or in the marketing world, you have customer relations management platforms. So the most common out there are you've got, we had a HubSpot, a supply clinic. That's a huge one. But basically, you want to be able to build out drip campaigns and target all of your customers, in our case, all of our patients. And so, something that this particular software does. So, I mean, the interface is super intuitive. It has all the bells and whistles that you would expect. And then layered on is, okay, you want to mine your data and pull up really quickly a list of every patient that has ortho treatment planned or whitening treatment planned, but has not converted on the treatment. You can super quickly pull a list, use one of their templates to send out an email. Hey, we're doing this promotion on whitening. If you sign up or do it by this day, we're giving some percent discount. It's just a very clean and organized way to communicate with your patients. And that's literally, I'd say, more than half of the battle. You do all this, you get a patient in, you do all this treatment plan. Maybe they do some, maybe they don't do anything, but you should be dropping them into a drip campaign and have several touch points, but just build out. Talk about systems, communication systems are massively important. And so you can set up, okay, before appointments, I want the automatic email to go out 2 weeks before, 2 days before, and then a couple hours before. And here's what each of them will say. And their software knows, okay, ahead of time, those messages just automatically go out. So all of that communication is templated. Yeah, there are other. I'm sure there are other things that are escaping me at the moment, but that's a little bit of that's way outside of the typical Dentrix or Eaglesoft or what have you. And those are super clunky, super old softwares that are incredibly frustrating. And I don't think I'm offending anybody because they just are. I mean, that's pretty universally known. So, there are some upstarts in the area, but it does get overwhelming. There are so many choices now for every single piece of the tech stack. And there are tons of overlapping feature sets too. So,
Mm,
the communication, you may say, okay, well, there's Weave also, and that's implemented in a ton of practices. But if that can kind of be bundled in with the practice management software, and I don't need to layer on this additional, I'm going to do that all day, every day.
mhm.
But you're right, navigating, there's not yet a perfect stack of the most sort of streamlined, minimalistic number that you can get for, to have every feature set. So anyhow, that's practice management. That's how I'm thinking about that. I've got Soda Cloud I just subscribed to for, for image acquisition and storage. I don't have a server in my practice. I want to try to have an entirely serverless cloud-based practice. Um, I do have a very, very large computer. I think it's got like 6 terabytes of storage that's connected to the iCat for CBCTs. We're going to do that for every patient that walks in. And we should actually
Mm,
touch on that, is what the
mhm,
diagnostic exam looks like. Because
mhm.
from my perspective, your patient walks in and what do? You do a dental exam, perio charting, maybe an FMX, maybe not, maybe just some bite wings and a pan or whatever. And it is my strong belief that the more diagnostics that you can run, the more you see, the more you benefit the patient because the more you're catching, and then the healthier the business is because there's more production throughput. So, yeah, I've built out a very comprehensive suite of diagnostics exam that every single patient that walks in the door, everybody who's a member is going to get the full suite, the full package. It's just part of the membership.
That's awesome.
Back to, you were kind of asking me about processes and tech stack.
Uh-huh.
I did subscribe it to one of the AI companies. I just subscribed to Pearl, which layers into Soda Cloud right away. And I don't know. By the way, this is not like I'm not talking my book or anything. I don't have any interest, any ownership, any relationship really with I'm mentioning. So I should definitely preface that
Yeah,
because in theory it's
yeah,
possible.
yeah.
So I'm not seeing, me speaking, what I'm adopting doesn't benefit me in any way.
Yeah, and I got you.
So yeah, we've got Pearl, which layers right into Soda Cloud. Now they're not yet equipped. I don't remember details between Soda Cloud and Pearl, but for D, so for CBCT evaluation, case planning, that kind of stuff. So for cases, surgical cases, I need an additional software. So now I'm looking at like DTX as diagnostic and treatment planning software. So I wish that all of that capability was just bundled together with the software I'm already subscribing to.
Yeah.
But it's not, and it is what it is. Yeah, I'll pause there. I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole. If you guys have want to take this
Yeah.
in another direction.
No, yeah, no, I love that. Well, Master, go ahead. That get to the technology side of it. Master is the gig on that one.
Yeah, Dr. Milad, you're hogging all the questions here. I'm teasing.
Well, that's quite interesting, and especially I'm very much a big fan of using solutions and building things that are not out there. And Dr. Milad knows this. Like anything that I think of, anything that I think of building, I always firstly look at how other people have built it, then look at what's available out there, and then try to innovate through it, try to come up with things that people have not built. My first question to you would be, what gave you this mindset? Because I know where I got it from. I'm trying to see like where you got it from.
The mindset of building or of viewing the
Innovating.
world differently, innovating.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I've had it. I don't know. I think it's almost a. I think the sort of entrepreneur quality of seeing something that's not ideal and saying I can do this 10 times better, and this doesn't make any sense, and then actually going and doing something about it is kind of innate. You'll hear all the time people that want to be entrepreneurs and say, oh, like they're trying to crowdsource for an idea. It's like, no, man, if you're going to build something really special, it's because it's meaningful to you and you understand the problem and you understand and you see the world differently. You see a 10x better way of doing something. I don't know. I don't know if there's a moment where, where it's like, hey, I want to, that was like inspiring to go build, if you will. I think it was more, maybe more self-deprecating in a way is I tend to be impatient with solutions that I see that don't work and frustrate me. And it's like, man, there's got to be something better here. So to be brutally honest, maybe it's more of that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, the thing that empowered myself was, back when I was like 15, 16, I had one invention that it was a very, out of the box thing that I just quit school for about a year and just focused on that. And I used to get a lot of backlash from it from other people, but I just kept going on it and I started, innovating, building something that people would love. And after a year or so, like it started paying off. And that was the thing that I noticed. Okay, if you do things against the flow, sometimes it works. It's necessarily not supposed to fail just because other people tell you. So that was the moment that really empowered me. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for anything else that I'm doing in life, pretty much.
I agree. I was listening recently to, what was it? I consume a lot of content. Someone was describing the it was a autobiography of Sam Zell, who was like a real estate magnate and super uh very very successful businessman in all sorts of capacities. One of his sort of core driving principles and beliefs was one of scarcity, right? He would be interested in something if the opportunity was something special and scarce. And I think I was reflecting on his comments and basically pull that into the entrepreneurship context, the context of building businesses and thinking differently. And when you, to your point, when you can see things differently than most or create something that's, very against the grain and uncommon, you have just created your own scarcity, right? You
Hmm.
have just created something that is, isn't elsewhere in whatever flavor that is.
Yeah, totally. I mean, because you've also been a startup founder before, they call it a moat. You should be after building moats
Sure,
for what
sure, sure.
you're doing. And I had one question, Scott, from your um, journey in supply clinic. What was it? What was the first problem that you saw that you thought of building this? And then I have more follow-up questions because it was a B2B to C model, right? So you were getting vendors on one side, like you were not a supply company yourself. You were
Correct.
pretty much the connector between the vendors and the like individual clinics and
Yeah,
the
correct. So to answer your two questions in order, it was a personal frustration. I had to buy several of my own supplies for residency, and I did dental school in Philadelphia. I had faculty that introduced me to a couple of local reps of, I think, just Shine and Patterson reps in Philadelphia at the time, and I sent them my list of things, and they sent me back pricing, and then I like shopped around online, and it was like, I see the same exact supplies for like 30% less elsewhere. This makes absolutely no sense. Why am I going to buy through you? Amazon at this time, when did I finish dental school? In 2010. Amazon was already around for a long time. It's not like buying things online was a new concept. And so figured there had to be a better way to kind of aggregate a number of the online sellers. So that was where it was just a personal frustration of like, why am I going to pay hundreds or thousands of extra dollars when it's literally the exact same item? You asked then about the model. So yes, it's a two-sided marketplace. So on the one side, there were sellers of dental supplies, whether they be distributors or manufacturers. And on the other side, dental practices that bought those supplies. Now, it's a little bit, your observation is astute in that it's a bit of a B2B/C, or it's kind of a blend there, because the person doing the shopping almost mirrored more of an individual consumer, because it was most often an assistant or someone, on the team in the practice.
to pretty much allow you to scale.
Yeah, two-sided marketplaces are brutal for exactly the reason you brought up. It's a chicken and the egg perpetually. So no, we couldn't. For us, it was like, well, we can't have any customers unless we have products on the website. So there was an obvious place to start, was, hey, we need to get vendors of these products up on the platform. And so most of the known names and reputable names didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want to participate. It's like, why would we take our time to get you our inventory and to jump through all these hoops when you don't even have any customers yet, right? So you start with the smallest of the small that are also entrepreneurs and trying out literally everything possible, and you work your way up. It's like step at a time.
Started with this small
Maybe not
fish.
the answer you wanted to hear, but it is. Marketplaces they're hard. They're really hard.
No,
Are
I
indeed.
understand. It's a double-edged sword because on one end, like if you don't have any vendors, you're not going to get clients. And then once you go to vendors, if you don't have any clients, then they don't want to work with you. So it's kind of like a challenge that I think.
That's right. That's right. You gotta figure out how to hack the growth. Yeah.
And were you like the solo founder in that venture?
No, yeah, great question. I co-founded with one of my brothers. So we co-founded, we went through the whole journey together. He's not a dentist. His background is in whatever, undergrad in economics. He did a master's in statistics, so very data oriented. But neither of us had any technical know-how. So the first thing we had to do was find a developer to build the platform. And so a story I enjoy telling is our very first developer was someone who was my brother's computer science TA in school. And he came out for a summer. He had a job lined up, but it wasn't supposed to start till sometime in August. And so from May through whenever that time was, he had two jobs with us. One was to start building the skeleton of the platform, and the second was to help us find a full-time full stack developer. And so I was a Perio resident at the time, and I would go with this guy who was still in college to all of these. We built our platform on Ruby on Rails, which was the popular way to build at the time when we started. We went to like Ruby on Rails meetups, like happy hours at bars, and I would show up. I'm like, hey, I'm a Perio resident. Oh yeah, that's like a surgical specialty in dental. And they're like, okay, like what are you doing here? Eventually, there are these big kind of tech week conferences that most major cities host once a year. And so there was Tech Week Chicago, and it's hosted at the Merchandise Mart, this massive building. And we had no money, we had nothing, and so we like bummed badges off of people walking in. And I was a resident at the time, right? So I have like less than no money. So we bummed badges off of people walking in. We go up and we're like walking around checking out all the vendors, and then we saw there's a job fair section. So we of course I didn't even know about the job fair section to pay to be there. So we squatted. We went to an empty table in the job fair section and started talking with random people that walked by and collected like 50 resumes. And we interviewed a bunch of those people, and one of them ended up being our lead engineer for over a decade.
That's funny.
The fit was great. When we started, we didn't even have an office or a workspace. He worked out of my studio apartment in Chicago. I would leave my keys at the desk in the front. I would go into residency super early in the morning. He would get to my apartment at like 9 in the morning or whatever it was. And then when I got back at 5, 5:30, 6 o'clock, we would recap the day. And that was, yeah, that was our existence for like, I don't know, it was like 3, 4 months. And then eventually we were like, okay, we really need a space. So raised some capital, got a space, etc. A shared space. But yeah, so
That's
super, super scrappy.
that's all.
No, that's quite interesting. And I have so many questions. I just don't know which one of them.
Well, Dr. Scott, before Basu, before you move on, I wanted to ask Dr. Scott these questions. Like, so when you pick the location for your practice that you're building out, because this is something that me and Masud were working on too. What were some of the key factors that you considered when you picked the location?
Yeah, great question. I was very keen. So I can tell you, the first thing I thought about is my target demographic. I'm unabashed about being interested in specifically baby boomers and older Gen Xers, bonus if they're retired. Many reasons for it, but to me, it's just so obvious. You have, that is the cohort of the population that has by far and away the most dental needs. They grew up with the worst dental care. There's a kind of this downward death spiral of teeth once you start working on them, and it is what it is. And so they have the most needs. They, as a cohort of the population, have the most disposable income. They have the most time on their hands, especially if they're retired. Yeah. So to me, and maybe it's from working in the perio world. That's my patient population tends to lean in that direction. But I am very keen on tailoring the experience and the branding and the look and the feel of the brand and the practice to that audience. And I think, yeah, so I think a number of others have built decent, recognizable brands within dentistry, but for the most part, those brands have targeted the notable ones have targeted millennials specifically. So they're the tens of the world, the mints of the world, that kind of thing. And I'm being sort of very intentional about who I'm targeting, what the messaging is, and that leads me to your question, which is, location. And so my preference was a retail location, so not within a big office building, just because of visibility. Now, where I ended up was actually in an office building, but it's like a 12-story office building. You walk in, there's a 2-story beautiful atrium, and there's a mezzanine, so there's a balcony, and behind the balcony is one of the offices. That's the location I took. So everybody that walks in the building, it's right front and center in front of everybody. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I chose an area there's a mall here in the North Shore of Chicago called Old Orchard. It's a high-end mall. It is a building right off of the main highway, the main artery up and down the North Shore back to go down to the city. Yeah, there were just a number of factors that I liked about the location. I also worked with an outstanding kind of realtor that specializes in dental.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I could position myself for success with that. And he heard about the space before it went on market, and yeah, just grabbed it.
I love it.
So yeah, that would be my recommendation if you're looking, is find in your market
Mhm.
somebody who is very knowledgeable and finds locations for dentists on a regular basis and has their finger on the pulse of a market. The nice thing about my location is it was also a prior dental practice. So
Mm,
there was plumbing already. There was a ton that was falling apart, and I had a, big, like very, say, large renovation, but I saved a ton on some of that initial build cost because there was no plumbing. So if you've got an office that's either closing or the practice is moving, or they sold to a DSO and now the DSO is consolidating into a different location, those are really good opportunities.
love
And
that.
Scott, do you prefer, like, when it comes to practice acquisition, do you prefer bigger states, like, for example, getting something like in the heart of New York? or would you go to the rural areas?
It's an interesting question. I'm not in the game of practice acquisition, so I'm not buying somebody else's practice. I'm reviving what was a decayed, empty practice. But that is in my mind, that's a lifestyle question. I think where you and your significant other or family want to be, I think that in the vast majority of cases drives that decision, to be honest. If you are someone who is open to being in a more rural area, which most dentists are, I would say the majority are not, there's so much opportunity out there, and I would in a heartbeat do that. But most people have, they have other motivating factors. They have their parents in a location, and they've got family, and it's amazing having the built-in village, so to speak, right there with you. So there are all sorts of factors that come into play, just life factors that end up driving that decision. But if you don't have those, I would argue there is way more opportunity in rural areas than there is in a concentrated area. Otherwise, if you're in a saturated market, back to what we were saying before, differentiate, figure out your secret sauce, your niche, what you do that's special and different from everybody else.
Mhm. Always, yeah, I mean, definitely. Especially, I think the opportunity for doing that would be a lot more when you go to rural areas because, like, in bigger cities, like, probably there would be some up to the, very technologically advanced practices that you would have to compete with. But once you go to a rural area, like an urban area that's majority of people are old and like, they don't know much about technology, I think you would have a big upper hand to all of them to try to
Sure. No,
do.
I would say the premise, I think, of your comment is that you can save a lot and build out for a less expensive practice by maybe not investing in some of the more expensive technology. The one thing I would encourage you to consider is what is the return on investment of that piece of technology. And so that piece of software may end up being way worth the $100 or $200 or $300 a month, and pay itself back multiple times over. So it's a you'll make that calculation, but obviously don't take on more debt than you can or should. So pace yourself appropriately for sure. But yeah, in a rural area, you're just not going to have much competition of any variety. So if there's nobody else doing any dentistry, or maybe there are one or two others, and it's much easier to differentiate yourself in that environment than it might be in a big city with tons of others on your block or in your building. There's some buildings in downtown Chicago where there are literally a dozen or more practices in the same building. So, and it's the same in any big city.
No, no, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so many life factors that prevent people from being able to do that. Maybe it's your spouse's job and you don't really have control over being able to move to a specific place. But
So when it comes to the one thing that you mentioned, I mean, you were in the supply world of things
yeah,
early on in your career. So now that you're transitioning to kind of like back to the ownership and all that, what is one way or what is the thing that you're doing to ensure that you're getting the best possible deal when it comes to supplies? Because the supply can, if you let it go, you can order 30, $40,000 a month in supplies for a dental practice. And I have seen it, the dentists doing that. But like you said early on, you shopped around. Are you still doing that, or do you have like a system in place for that? What is your kind of planning around that to ensure that the money is being invested into supplies and not wasted, essentially?
yeah, I'm in a little bit of a unique position. So I don't necessarily think that most people can do what I do, just given the relationships that I have in the space. But I would, as a very basic principle, yes, you want to do some degree of shopping, and so you also have to weigh your time, and your time is valuable as well. So whether it's you or somebody else on the team that's spending their fractional time doing that and could be doing something else. So it's not in a vacuum where you can endlessly shop around. But best hygiene, best practice, if that's sort of the nature of the question, would be, yeah, run a process for everything that you buy. And by run a process, I mean compare pricing across, say, three different vendors is a pretty easy rule of thumb. If you're putting your entire book, and we did this, we helped lots of DSOs through this process called a RFP process, or request for proposal. You take your book of business, you say, hey, historically over the past calendar year, here's the list of stuff that I bought at the volume I bought it, and they'll shop it out. They bid it out. They send it to uh, um, three different companies, and they say, I'm running a process. I'm sending this to multiple companies. Please put forward the best offer you can. You run the process, do it with technology, do it with, what have you. Now there's some pieces of equipment I'm buying now. It's like what was it? I wanted to buy an intraoral scanner, and uh, we did the demo, we did this, and then they're like, oh yeah, now go buy it from a dealer. We don't sell direct. Okay, fine. So talk to 3 different dealers. They'll lay out their pricing, and awesome. Yeah, just run the process, keep it simple, but also value your time.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's such a big thing. I think we were talking with Masood last night, and I says I see some of my friends that have an office. They're like, they don't want to pay for the software, but then yet they have their front staff doing everything. I'm like, well, if you think about it, you're paying that front staff $25 an hour when you can just get this piece of software to just pay like $300-400 that will do the same thing, and you can free your staff to do something else. So it's just like a lot of these things. I don't know where the mindset is, why it's a lot of dentists are just don't think about it from that perspective. And that's just something that frustrates me sometimes. And I'm like, I have this conversation with my dentist friend. I'm like, get this software so you don't have to you don't have to enter your own checks. You don't have to do your EOB and all that, so
Totally,
that's really frustrating sometimes.
totally.
Yeah.
You can make a recommendation, but you can lead the horse to water, right?
Yep. That's exactly it. Well, Mason, go ahead.
Yeah, Scott. So going back to your journey in supply clinic, uh, especially the time that you were building the product, right? So when it comes to building products, there are so many aspects that are involved. It's not just like, getting a developer and telling it, okay, I want to build this thing I have in my head. Like, I want to build a supply chain for all the dental clinics. And then it goes ahead and builds it. Like, he's going to ask you a lot of questions. There's going to be design that's involved with that. There's going to be backend. How are you going to design the backend? How are you going to make it compatible with all the other vendor like platforms out there in terms of onboarding, support, all of those things really come into play. So how
Yeah.
was your journey in figuring that out? Especially you said that you have not been a technical person.
Yeah, product management is a skill set of its own and a necessary component to building a technical product. One of the hardest things to do, and we work on this all the time, we endlessly worked on it with Supply Clinic, but in life in general, is communication. You can say one thing that makes sense in your head, and then a developer will build it and it makes sense in their head and it looks nothing like what you imagined. Learning how to communicate is such an important skill. Now, I'll say this as the person that was not the product manager between myself and my brother. My brother and his eye for detail is tremendous. His ability to communicate is amazing. And so, yeah, he was sort of primary point on that, but it's hard. There's no two ways about it. And it's funny. You're like, man, we're speaking the same language. I'm saying what I think is so clear and so obvious, but unless things are, given to a level of detail or literally wireframed out. So like draw a sketch on a piece of paper of what you're imagining and go through these, what may seem like minutia to you, but these ridiculously small details of how the website or product should act. It's all necessary. Yeah. I don't really have any advice other than just patience and know that communication is a difficult thing, and product management is a skill set unto itself. And tech companies, that's a role, that's a job, that's a specific person's job is product management. So not to beat yourself up when it proves to be a challenge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Totally.
when you start out, you're wearing a million hats, and it just is what it is. You have to own the role of many, many different people. So yeah, there's not an easy shortcut. I'll say that.
Yeah, totally. And so after you had the first version of your product built, because you firstly start with an MVP, that's like a very minimum product that you just want to get users on. And then you start getting users, and then you let your users design the rest of the product for you, depending on what they need. They just tell you, you get that feedback, and you turn it into a software.
You have to be careful with that, because once you have enough users, you're going to get feedback in all kinds of directions. And so being focused is also super important. But yeah, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. For many years, we were on a weekly deployment schedule. So when you talk about iterations, changes happen literally on a weekly basis. So to quantify the number of iterations that we went through, hundreds within a year. And every time it's you're iterating incrementally, you're tweaking this, you're improving that, you're fixing this workflow, you're building out that workflow. So yeah, I mean, I guess tens of thousands over the course of a decade is probably a fair. no pressure. I don't want to scare people who are looking to build something, but it just becomes part of your cycle. It becomes part of the workflow. It's like, hey, we've got, you build out a rhythm of development basically, and it becomes the norm, and you don't think too much about it, and you don't think of each incremental change as like a new version, but like think about every app that you have on your iPhone. How often are you downloading a new version of that app?
Yeah,
Weekly, probably.
yeah, very often.
Yeah, yeah,
And so once you got to that MVP, that you got something going on, and then, you pretty much systemized the development realm. Then how did you try to, because, when you are a founder, for a period of time, you're just too much focused on development. And, all day, all night, you're just thinking of engineering this product in your head. And then at some point after the product is ready, you have to put on a different hat, which is the hat of marketing and sales. And then you have to build your system in that realm now. How did you go about that? Building that. So you pretty much systemize the development realm. Now you have to jump into getting clients and getting other people to use this. How did you do that?
yeah. I mean, you add someone to your team who's specialized at doing that. There's no, I mean, just to do it yourself until there's a balance, and I don't think there's any one path. Every company is going to kind of have their own path, but um, yeah, I think there are a lot of pieces of advice. Some things, I might have done differently. Many first-time founders will fall into the trap of, you've got your amazing thing that you're building. You want it to be super stealth. Like you don't want to give your idea away to anybody else. And then you realize there comes a time where you're like, oh shit, I need to market this thing. I need to get it out. I need as many people to know about it as is humanly possible, right? It's like almost like the flip switches. But yeah, it's never early enough is the short answer. Like start, I mean, you guys are doing it right. Like you've started a podcast, you're going to build an audience, just be as out there and as present, and just know that your product, when you look back, if you have sort of any degree of success, when you look back a year from now, you're going to say, oh my God, my product was absolute garbage a year ago. And the same thing's going to happen, 6 months later and 6 months after that. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. I mean, I can speak personally. That's how the journey went.
And
Yeah,
when clients thought, do you think you should be, because I myself, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and before, my product reaches to a
you can't
certain.
be. You can't be. You have to. Perfection is the enemy of good, and your MVP should be ugly. It should be just enough to start getting people. And it's a balance. And I know it from sitting in your seat. It's like, okay, well, nobody's going to want to join if it looks ugly. And it has to be as perfect as possible. But that's the wrong way to think. You want to get it out there. You want to get exposure. You want to get feedback. You want to start iterating. And sure, some of your early customers or users or testers may test it and churn, and then they may come back later. But no, you want to get out. If your product is perfect, it's too late. That's
No, that's
just how it
great.
goes.
I
That's
love.
actually what I also heard from Amal. I don't know if you know him, like the CEO.
Yeah, yeah. Of
Yeah, he's
Patient Prism.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. He does. Did he say the same thing? Yeah,
Exactly. It's like if your product is too good and you just got into the market, then you're late to the market.
he's right. He's right.
Well, that's the lesson learned, Masood. We gotta hurry up, man.
The best time to release was yesterday or last week or last week.
No, because that this guy is funny. Every time I'm talking to Masood, it's like, I just need to add one more thing before I go. I'm like, man, just go, get it done, be done, let's go.
The mentality though should be great. That's for next week's deployment. That's for
Yeah.
the next update. Get it out, and then you can iterate, and you should iterate, and it's gonna constantly, like 100 or 1,000 of those tweaks is gonna massively. That's when you look back 6 months later and you're like, wow, okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Dr. Scott, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you something. You've been out of dental school for a long time. You went to a residency route. You started a company. You sold it. Now you're opening a practice. What is one advice that you can give to a younger dentist that is looking to start their career, open their practice, and get going? What is one thing that you can tell them to do early on in their career so that they can set themselves up for that success?
I think the mentality of most dentists is different from the three of us on this podcast. We are definitively outliers. Dentists are conservative as human beings, by and large. I'd say on the risk tolerance spectrum, they're not risk tolerant. They're risk adverse, right? And what you don't know may scare you, and you don't learn a lot about. You don't get a business education in dental school. You don't get a management education. You don't get, you don't get a marketing education. There are all of these elements of starting a practice, because now guess what? You're a business owner, and you're going to wear, 30 different hats, and you're going to have to fill all these roles, and you figure it out. Like, the nice thing about being a dentist and being able to start a business that's a practice is that it's a very, very safe bet. Now, I have the luxury of saying this as someone that started a tech company, which is, what are chances of success? Like, single digits, basically. It is really not something to be scared of. Like, the vast, vast, vast majority, I think it's the single digit percentage of practices that don't succeed in dental. But yeah, get someone to advise you on, on some of the business aspect. There are a ton of consultants out there who would love to be able to help you. There are, there's a whole network of folks out there that would gladly have a conversation, give some free pointers and some free direction. Maybe the biggest advice is just to ask. Like, literally go out and ask somebody, what am I missing? This is what I'm thinking through to start a dental practice. What should I be thinking about? What should I have asked that I didn't ask? And soliciting feedback. If you don't ask, the answer is automatically no.
Mm.
That's just the way the world works. So yeah, just to know that the business of owning and running a dental practice is relatively safe, is a low risk prospect. And yeah, just going for it. Now, that said, you come out of school saddled with so much debt that it's hard. It's really hard. And I get it. I only looked at public schools when I was looking at residency programs because I already had so much debt. I couldn't psychologically tolerate taking on that much more debt. When you start a practice, if it's, if you're a few years out of school or just out of school, well, guess what? You're adding to that debt burden. So it is hard. It's psychologically hard. And I don't hold it against anybody that's like, whoa, I need to get myself in a better situation. And then the advice is like, great. So go work somewhere for 5 years or 10 years and learn as much as possible about the operations of the practice as you can. Like, understand that everybody who works there plays a role that you didn't learn, most likely, and learn as much as possible. And then when you're more financially comfortable, bite the bullet.
I love that. Well, Dr. Scott, as always, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
We are only scratching the surface, but I don't want to take any more of your time. 2025 it was a good year for me personally because I got to meet so many people in the dental industry by doing this podcast. And one of the gentlemen that I had it was like almost like an honor for me to meet you because you have been so great of introduced me to Dr. Paul. Every time I reached out, you're willing to help. So your mentorship is valued by me. I truly appreciate the time that you gave us.
My pleasure, man. It's a text message. It's literally like,
I appreciate
the
it.
intros are not a big deal. I don't get people who are like gating their intros or want to charge people for making introductions. It's like, no, man, you're just a human being, want to run it by somebody first. They're cool. Great. Here, it took 10 seconds to write a text. So your praise is probably too much for the effort that I put in, but I appreciate it.
I really do. I appreciate it. Well, as you were talking, just mentioning text, Master just texted me. He's like, can Dr. Scott mentor me? I'm like, yeah, I'll just make a group text message. Maybe he can mentor you through what's going on.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Seriously. Yeah, reach out. That's totally fine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scott.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Yes, sir.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.